9 Golden Age stars with IQ scores that shocked fans. They were the most iconic faces in Hollywood history. The stars everyone admired. The legends we assume had to be brilliant, talented, and exceptional to reach the top. But what if I told you? Some of these icons couldn't remember a simple line. Some didn't understand basic directions on set, and others were privately labeled by studios as barely functional. During Hollywood's golden age, studios secretly tested the IQs of their stars, and the results for these 9 legends shocked directors, frustrated co-stars, and were buried for decades. So how did people considered not very intelligent become immortal symbols of cinema? Tonight, we expose the truth Hollywood worked desperately to hide. Marilyn Monroe, the world's most desired woman, who could barely remember a sentence. She walked onto the set glowing like a dream. Every eye followed her. Every room bent around her presence. Marilyn Monroe didn't just enter a scene, she altered gravity. Men forgot their lines. Women measured themselves against her shadow. And the camera adored her. But behind the platinum smile, something was quietly unraveling. Marilyn couldn't remember her lines. Not occasionally. Not on bad days. Almost never. A single sentence, 6 simple words, could take 40, 50, sometimes 60 takes. Directors clenched their jaws. Crew members checked their watches. And Marilyn stood there, trembling, apologizing, confused by words that refused to stay put. Studio files would later reveal what no fan magazine ever dared print. Her reported IQ hovered around 82, well below what Hollywood considered acceptable for a leading lady. She struggled with logic, with sequencing, with basic comprehension. Schedules confused her. Instructions overwhelmed her. Table reads felt like public humiliation. Billy Wilder once joked that directing Marilyn was like waiting for a miracle repeatedly. And yet, when the miracle came, it was undeniable. Because when Marilyn finally landed a line, something extraordinary happened. The room went silent. Her vulnerability, real, unfiltered, unprotected, poured straight through the lens. She wasn't acting innocence. She was innocence. What studios saw as a defect became her greatest weapon. Marilyn didn't understand scripts the way others did. But she understood desire. She understood loneliness. She understood what it meant to want love and expect abandonment. Her confusion wasn't fake. Her fragility wasn't constructed. Audiences felt it because it was real. Hollywood tried to hide her limitations with cue cards, whispered lines, endless retakes. But they could never hide what truly made her unforgettable. Marilyn Monroe proved something Hollywood never wanted to admit. You don't need to be intellectually brilliant to move the world. You need to make people feel. And no one, before or since, made the world feel more vulnerable, more tender, more human than a woman who struggled to remember a sentence, but taught generations how to feel desire, sadness, and empathy without saying a word. Her mind faltered. Her soul did not. Jane Mansfield, the genius bombshell who may have been the greatest illusion of all. Jane Mansfield never wanted to be just another blonde. Hollywood already had plenty of those. She wanted something more dangerous, more memorable, more impossible. So she became the woman who shocked America by claiming an IQ of 149. A platinum bombshell who quoted philosophy. A sex symbol who spoke about classical music and foreign languages. A woman who smiled for the cameras and let the world believe she was brilliant. The press ate it up. Photographs appeared of Jane reading Plato. Headlines praised her genius mind. Interviewers introduced her as the smartest woman in Hollywood. But behind the studio gates, the story was very different. Directors complained she couldn't follow basic blocking. Co-stars whispered that she didn't understand the meaning of her own lines. Publicists quietly rewrote interviews to avoid unscripted questions. Years later, insiders would claim her real aptitude test placed her closer to 85, barely above functional. And that's when the truth becomes far more interesting. Because Jane Mansfield may not have been academically brilliant, but she was strategic. She understood something most actors never did. Hollywood wasn't selling intelligence. It was selling fantasy. And fantasy didn't need to be true, it needed to be convincing. Jane realized that being dumb and sexy was forgettable. But being sexy and brilliant? That was unprecedented. So she performed intelligence the same way she performed glamour. Carefully staged, perfectly lit, relentlessly controlled. She memorized just enough, learned just enough, and relied on others to build the illusion around her. And it worked. Jane Mansfield became a brand, a contradiction people couldn't stop talking about. Was she a genius? Was she pretending? Did it even matter? The tragedy is that the mask eventually became heavier than the woman beneath it. The pressure to maintain the lie never stopped. Every interview was a test. Every pause or every mistake a potential collapse. Jane didn't fail because she wasn't smart enough. She failed because Hollywood demanded she be something no human could sustain forever. Her story leaves us with an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes intelligence isn't about what you know, but about knowing exactly what the world wants to believe. Jane Mansfield may not have had the IQ she claimed, but she engineered one of the boldest illusions in Hollywood history. And for a while, the world believed it completely. Tony Curtis, the beautiful man who had to learn how to think on camera. Before he was Tony Curtis, he was Bernie Schwartz, a poor kid from the Bronx with an accent Hollywood didn't want, and an education that never quite stuck. When Universal signed him, they didn't sign his mind. They signed his face. Perfect bone structure, movie star eyes, a smile the camera couldn't resist. But when the scripts arrived, panic followed. Tony struggled to read. Pages blurred together. Long scenes felt impossible to understand, let alone memorize. Studio assessments quietly placed his IQ around 90, technically average, but barely. Enough to get by. Not enough to impress. Producers joked cruelly that 80 of those points are in his cheekbones. Early on, Tony wasn't asked to understand his roles. He was told where to stand, when to smile, which word to emphasize. Break it down. Make it simple. Keep him moving. Behind the scenes, he felt exposed. Surrounded by trained actors, sharp writers, confident directors. Tony knew he wasn't the smartest person in the room, and it haunted him. But something inside him refused to stay shallow. Instead of pretending, Tony studied. He watched how actors listened, how they paused, how they used silence. He learned emotion before intellect. Reaction before reasoning, line by line, scene by scene, mistake by mistake. By the time Some Like It Hot came around, Tony wasn't just a pretty face anymore. He was holding his own beside Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon, matching timing, rhythm, and vulnerability. And then came the defiant ones. The role demanded depth, transformation. The same man once mocked for his limitations earned an Academy Award nomination. Tony Curtis proved something rare in Hollywood. You don't have to start brilliant to become exceptional. Intelligence isn't always about speed. Sometimes it's about persistence. Tony never claimed genius. He never faked brilliance. He did something far harder. He learned. And in an industry obsessed with effortless talent, Tony Curtis built a career the slow way, through humility, discipline, and the courage to grow in public. Not the smartest man in the room, but one of the most determined. Mamie Van Doren. When beauty was enough and understanding was optional. Mamie Van Doren didn't need to speak to be noticed. The moment she appeared, the room understood exactly why she was there. Platinum hair, curves sculpted for Technicolor, a look that stopped conversations mid-sentence. Hollywood didn't ask Mamie to think. It asked her to exist. But behind the glow, confusion followed her everywhere. On set, directions piled up and collapsed in her mind. Left became right. Camera marks felt abstract. Technical language might as well have been another dialect. Studio insiders later claimed her reported IQ sat around 84, low average, bordering on limited. Not a secret whispered with cruelty, but with resignation. Directors learned quickly. Don't explain. Demonstrate. They physically placed her on her mark, moved her shoulders by hand, showed her where to look instead of telling her why. Dialogue was trimmed, scenes simplified, emotions reduced to instinct. And somehow it worked. Mamie lit up the screen not because she understood the story, but because she was the story. She embodied desire without analysis, presence without reflection, a fantasy that didn't ask questions. The studio system adapted around her limitations with ruthless efficiency. They never tried to make her versatile, never pushed complexity, never expected growth. Mamie was cast in roles that asked only one thing: be beautiful, be visible, be silent when necessary. And the audience responded. Tickets sold, posters printed, names climbed marquees. But there was a cost. Off-camera, conversations stalled. Interviews were tightly controlled. Unscripted moments became dangerous. Mamie knew she was being handled, not cruelly but deliberately. And in a strange way, she accepted it. Hollywood didn't want her mind. It wanted her image. Her story reveals one of the coldest truths of the Golden Age. The system didn't care what you lacked, as long as it could design around it. Mamie Van Doren didn't rise despite her limitations. She rose because Hollywood decided they didn't matter. In a world where beauty paid better than understanding, she was exactly what the machine needed. Tab Hunter, America's perfect boy, who needed everything broken down. Tab Hunter looked like the future America wanted. Athletic, blonde and endlessly wholesome. Teenagers adored him. Parents trusted him. Warner Brothers saw a goldmine. But behind the smile that sold millions of tickets, Tab struggled to keep up. Words didn't land the way they should. Sentences slipped away moments after he heard them. Scripts felt dense, heavy, like they were written for someone else. Studio assessments reportedly placed his IQ around 87, low average, well below what executives expected from a leading man expected to speak for a generation. Early in his career, Tab was fed lines phonetically. Not because he was lazy, but because comprehension didn't come naturally. An acting coach once said teaching Tab Shakespeare felt like teaching a Labrador poetry. Not cruel, just honest. So the studio adapted. Dialogue was sliced into tiny pieces. Scenes were shot in short bursts. Visual cues replaced explanations. Stand here. Smile. Say this. And Tab delivered every time. What he lacked in processing speed, he made up for in effort. He showed up early. He rehearsed endlessly. He never complained. But the pressure to appear effortlessly confident took its toll. Tab knew he wasn't the sharpest in the room. And in an industry that worshipped intelligence almost as much as beauty, that knowledge weighed on him. Years later, in his autobiography, Tab finally admitted what Hollywood had hidden for decades. His education was limited. Reading had always been difficult. Learning took longer. And yet, he endured. Tab Hunter's success wasn't built on brilliance. It was built on persistence. Hollywood could simplify scripts, but they couldn't manufacture dedication. His story reminds us of a quieter kind of strength, the ability to keep going even when everything takes more effort than it should. Tab Hunter didn't become a star because things were easy. He became a star because he never stopped trying. Dorothy Lamour. Perfectly composed. As long as nothing went off script. Dorothy Lamour was never meant to surprise anyone. She was meant to soothe them. Exotic beauty. A warm smile. A voice that felt calm, practiced, reassuring. Wrapped in a sarong, she became an icon, the visual anchor of Hollywood's escapism during uncertain times. Audiences didn't ask questions when Dorothy appeared. They relaxed. Behind the scenes, the calm was carefully engineered. Dorothy struggled when the script disappeared. Unplanned questions froze her. Improvised moments unraveled her composure. Without rehearsal, her confidence collapsed. Studio insiders later claimed her reported IQ hovered around 89, technically within the average range, but at its very edge. Enough to function smoothly only inside structure. And Paramount knew it. They protected her with precision. Interviews were tightly controlled. Public appearances were rehearsed. Lines were memorized word for word, never paraphrased. One makeup artist said it best. She didn't have dialogue. She had choreography. In the road to films, Bob Hope and Bing Crosby carried the chaos. They improvised. They joked. They played. Dorothy stood between them like a perfectly placed note in a song. Timed, elegant, predictable. And that was the point. When the world stayed within boundaries, Dorothy excelled. When things became abstract or spontaneous, she vanished behind her smile. Hollywood didn't punish her for that. It organized her life around it. Her career was built like a controlled environment, where uncertainty never entered the room. And within that environment, she thrived. This wasn't deception. It was design. Dorothy Lamour didn't fail because of her limitations. She succeeded because the system understood them. Her story reveals a subtle truth about success. Some people shine brightest not when they adapt to chaos, but when the world adapts to them. Dorothy didn't need to be clever. She needed clarity. And Hollywood gave her exactly that. Johnny Weissmuller. When limitation became the perfect role, Johnny Weissmuller never learned how to act. He never needed to. Before Hollywood found him, he was already extraordinary. An Olympic champion, a body built for motion, lungs trained for endurance, muscles that obeyed without hesitation. Words, however, were another story. Conversation confused him. Complex instructions faded quickly. Language never became a place where he felt at home. Studio records would later suggest his reported IQ sat around 78, below what psychologists then considered low average, edging into what was once called borderline functioning. In any other role, this would have ended his career before it began. But Hollywood didn't cast Johnny to speak. It cast him to move. As Tarzan, Johnny didn't need vocabulary. He needed instinct. The jungle became his language. The vine, his sentence. The famous yell, raw, wordless, unforgettable, said everything dialogue never could. Directors quickly learned. Keep it simple. Keep it physical. One idea at a time. Me Tarzan. You Jane wasn't a line choice. It was a necessity. And somehow, that necessity became iconic. Johnny wasn't pretending to be a man raised by apes. He was a man more comfortable in motion than thought. What might have been a crippling limitation transformed into cinematic truth. Tarzan wasn't meant to understand civilization. He was meant to feel it, suspiciously, instinctively, honestly. And Johnny delivered that without effort. His success reveals a rare alignment between human limitation and artistic need. Hollywood didn't work around Johnny Weissmuller. It discovered him. In him, the studio system found something almost accidental. A man whose natural constraints fit a character so perfectly that no acting was required. Johnny Weissmuller wasn't a great actor. He was the right one. And sometimes that's all history needs. Esther Williams. Built for water and protected from words. Esther Williams was never meant to walk into a room. She was meant to emerge. From water. From light. From a world where gravity softened and language disappeared. Before Hollywood, Esther was a champion swimmer. Disciplined, precise, powerful in motion. In the pool, everything made sense. Timing. Control. On land, especially in front of dialogue-heavy scripts, it didn't. Studio insiders later claimed her reported IQ was around 83, low average, far below what MGM expected from a traditional leading lady. Lines were hard to retain. Complex motivations slipped away. Verbal nuance felt foreign. One crew member joked that her dialogue was so difficult they might as well have written it in chalk on the pool wall. MGM saw the problem immediately. And instead of fighting it, they did something remarkable. They redesigned cinema. Rather than forcing Esther into dramatic roles that would expose her limitations, the studio built an entirely new genre around her, the aquatic musical. In water, Esther didn't need words. Her body spoke. Every dive was a sentence. Every turn a paragraph. Every synchronized movement, a full emotional arc. Dialogue was minimized. Plots were simplified. Camera movement replaced conversation. What audiences saw as spectacle was, behind the scenes, protection. Directors used visual cues instead of explanations. Scenes were choreographed down to the second. Nothing was left abstract. And Esther thrived. She became not just a star, but a phenomenon. A woman so associated with water that her name became synonymous with an entire cinematic experience. Her limitations didn't disappear. They were designed around. Esther Williams' story is one of Hollywood's most elegant solutions. Instead of asking, "What can't she do?" the studio asked, "What does she do better than anyone else alive?" And then they built everything around that answer. She reminds us that intelligence isn't only spoken. Sometimes it flows. Sometimes it dives. Sometimes it moves so beautifully that words become unnecessary. Esther Williams didn't conquer Hollywood by mastering dialogue. She conquered it by never needing it at all. Buster Crabbe, the hero who didn't need to understand the world to save it. Buster Crabbe was built for motion, not contemplation. Broad shoulders, an athlete's posture, a face that looked heroic before he ever spoke a word. Before Hollywood, he was already a champion, an Olympic gold medal swimmer. Discipline lived in his muscles. Routine lived in his body. Words, however, never stayed long. When studios tested him, insiders later claimed his reported IQ hovered around 81, low average, edging dangerously close to what executives quietly labeled problematic. Scripts confused him. Abstract ideas stalled him. Even basic sci-fi terminology caused hesitation. One co-star joked that it took 3 takes just for Buster to understand the word spaceship. So Hollywood made a decision. They would never ask him to understand the world. They would ask him to run through it. As Flash Gordon, as Buck Rogers, as Tarzan, Buster didn't need complexity. He needed direction. Run here. Look scared. Point. Fight. Motivation was replaced by movement. Dialogue was stripped down to essentials. Heroism became physical. And it worked. In the serialized adventure films of the 1930s and 40s, audiences didn't want introspection. They wanted action, momentum, a hero who looked right in the costume and never slowed the story down with questions. Buster was perfect. He didn't overthink danger. He didn't analyze fear. He charged forward. Behind the scenes, directors learned to break everything into single actions. One idea at a time. No abstraction. No nuance. And in doing so, they unlocked something powerful. Buster Crabbe became the blueprint for the action hero, a figure defined not by intellect, but by decisiveness. His story completes a larger truth about Hollywood's golden age. Success was never about intelligence alone. It was about alignment. When a person's strengths matched a role perfectly, limitations faded into irrelevance. Buster Crabbe didn't need to understand the universe he was saving. He just needed to move through it with confidence. And for an entire generation, that was more than enough. Together, these 9 stars reveal a hidden truth Hollywood never advertised. IQ was never the gatekeeper of greatness. Design was. When the system recognized what someone could do and built the world around that, legends were born.